You had the date. You checked every box. The conversation was smooth. The energy was right. The sex was solid. She walked out of your place smiling. Then nothing. No texts, no calls, no reason. Here's the truth most men don't want to face. If sex alone were enough, she wouldn't vanish after giving you access to her body. Women can sleep with a man and still feel zero pull to return. Attraction didn't fail. Connection did. And no, this isn't about romance, money, or muscles. There's a specific switch in the female brain that goes far deeper than lust. When that switch is flipped, she doesn't just want you, she attaches to you. Not consciously, biologically. Sex stimulates her body. That alone doesn't anchor her. I'm telling you this as a woman who understands exactly how women bond and why they walk away from men who believe they did everything right. This isn't about simping or emotional theatrics. It's about holding emotional frame without dulling your edge. If you want information that gives you leverage instead of fantasies, like and subscribe now. This isn't entertainment, this is clarity. So you're no longer moving blind. Let's break down what's actually happening and why it changes everything. You were fed a very specific lie about attraction. Maybe not outright, maybe not verbally, but through movies, social media, dating advice, and other men who were just as lost. Look better, earn more, be confident, be impressive, stack enough traits and a woman will stay. Here's what nobody says out loud. Most men who get left weren't unattractive, they weren't awkward, they didn't fail in bed. Many of them did everything right on paper. They got the date, they felt the chemistry, they had sex, and then they were erased. Because getting a woman's body was never the hard part. Holding a place in her emotional world is the gap most men don't see until it hurts. Women don't leave because the sex was bad. They leave because nothing remained after it ended. No imprint, no emotional residue, no signal strong enough to pull her back when you weren't there. You can excite her for a night and still be forgettable by morning. That's the brutal difference. Attraction isn't measured by how intense the moment was. It's measured by what lingers when the moment ends. And most men leave nothing behind. No emotional trace powerful enough to compete with her independence, her options, her life. So she doesn't stay, she doesn't chase, she doesn't explain. She moves on. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. The men who lose women this way usually believe they were exciting, fun, confident, even dominant. They mistake stimulation for impact. They confuse desire with attachment. They're not the same. A woman can want you and still feel nothing tying her to you. She can enjoy you and still feel safer leaving than staying connected. That's why this feels so confusing from the male side. You felt something spark. She didn't feel anything settle. And that difference changes everything. She didn't leave because you weren't exciting. She left because nothing in her stayed with you. To understand why excitement fades but attachment lasts, you have to stop thinking in terms of romance and start thinking in terms of chemistry, real brain chemistry. Most of what men call attraction runs on dopamine. Dopamine is the hit, the rush, the spike. It's released through novelty, flirting, tension, sex itself. It narrows focus and heightens sensation. Dopamine is powerful, but temporary, high, crash, gone. That's why lust burns fast. Dopamine doesn't bond. It motivates. It makes someone chase a feeling, not a person. When the stimulation ends, the pull disappears with it. No matter how intense the night was, dopamine gives her no reason to return once it's over. Oxytocin works differently. Oxytocin is released when a woman feels emotionally safe, when she feels seen instead of assessed, when her nervous system relaxes around you instead of staying alert. It's the hormone tied to trust, bonding, and long-term attachment. It's what turns "that was fun" into "this feels right." Here's what most men miss. Oxytocin doesn't feel dramatic. It feels grounding, familiar, calm. It doesn't spike. It settles. When oxytocin is activated, her body starts associating you with safety and regulation. Not just excitement, but relief. Not stimulation, but comfort. Her system registers you as someone she can lower her guard around. That's when attachment forms. She doesn't just like you. Her body remembers you. This is why a woman can walk away from incredible sex without looking back and still find herself thinking about a man who never tried to impress her. One gave her dopamine, The other gave her oxytocin. Dopamine excites her. Oxytocin imprints you. And imprinting isn't a choice. It isn't logical. It happens below thought, below language, below intention. Her nervous system decides long before her mind explains it. So when men say, "I don't get it, the chemistry was insane," they're talking about dopamine. And when women say, "I don't know why, I just feel comfortable with him," they're talking about oxytocin. One fades fast, the other rewires attachment. Once you understand that distinction, the confusion starts to disappear. You see why excitement alone never makes a woman stay, but safety makes her bond. You've probably lived this already. The date was good, the vibe was easy, the sex wasn't awkward, it worked. She laughed, she stayed over, she kissed you goodbye, and then morning came. No good morning, no follow-up, no fade, just silence. From the male side, this feels ruthless because your mind keeps replaying the highlights, the connection, the intimacy, the way she reacted to you. But while you're looping the night, she's already emotionally gone. Not because she's cold, not because she's heartless, and not because you messed something up. She disappeared because nothing anchored her to stay. Sex on its own doesn't create meaning. It creates sensation. And sensation drops fast once the body returns to baseline. If there's no emotional signal underneath the physical experience, her nervous system has no reason to pull her back toward you. So when the stimulation ends, the attachment ends with it. This is where most men misread what happened. They assume ghosting is a judgment of their performance. It isn't. It's a lack of emotional gravity. You didn't repel her. You simply didn't register deeply enough to matter. Think of it this way. Her body felt pleasure, but her system never relaxed. She enjoyed the moment, but she never felt safe enough to settle. And without that settling, there's no internal pull to reconnect. That's why explanations never come. There's nothing to explain. No unresolved tension. No emotional thread left open. The night closed cleanly. And here's the truth most men avoid. Women don't stay because something felt good. They stay because something felt grounding. Because being with you quieted their internal noise instead of adding to it. If nothing in her nervous system softened around you, she won't return. No matter how confident you were, no matter how good the sex was, no matter how right it all seemed. Ghosting isn't rejection. It's the absence of attachment. And until you understand that difference, this pattern will keep repeating. Different women, same ending. Let me make this real, because theory only lands once you see contrast. Picture the first man. On paper, he's everything men think women want. Tall, sharp dresser, successful. He plans impressive dates, orders with confidence, speaks with certainty. From the outside, he looks like a win. Friends would tell her she's lucky. Other men would assume he has it handled, and yet something's missing. Every conversation stays surface level. When she shares something personal, he responds correctly, but not emotionally. He hears her words, but nothing in him registers how she feels. There's no judgment, but there's also no depth, no resonance, no sense of being received. Being with him feels polished and oddly hollow. Now contrast that with the second man. He isn't flawless. He isn't flashy. He doesn't dominate the room when he enters, but when she speaks, he's present. Not performative, not trying to fix or impress. He notices shifts in her tone. He asks questions that aren't rehearsed. When she makes a dark joke, he doesn't correct her. He gets it. And when she opens up emotionally, he doesn't rush to solve it or redirect the conversation. He stays steady, grounded, unthreatened by her feelings. Something subtle happens around him. Her nervous system slows. She doesn't feel evaluated. She doesn't feel like she has to maintain an image. She can drop the mask without being punished for it. That permission, being emotionally seen without being managed, changes how her body responds. This is where attachment forms. Not because he's better on paper, but because being with him feels regulating. Over time, she starts thinking about him more, missing his presence, not his validation, wanting to share things with him first, and she might not even know why. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it feels inevitable. She didn't feel more attracted in the usual sense. She felt at home. And that feeling, Comfort without boredom, safety without control, is rare. When a woman finds it, her system doesn't release it easily. That's why one man is replaced quickly, while the other becomes the standard everyone else is measured against. This is where men misunderstand emotional safety. They hear safe and immediately think weak, passive, predictable, nice in a way that kills desire. So they resist it. They stay guarded, detached, overly dominant, because no man wants to be the guy she feels comfortable with but doesn't want. But emotional safety has nothing to do with softness. It's about steadiness. A man who creates emotional safety isn't chasing approval. He isn't over-explaining himself. He isn't performing masculinity or proving his value. He's grounded in who he is. And that groundedness transmits something powerful to a woman's nervous system. Calm. When you're emotionally solid, she doesn't feel rushed. She doesn't feel tested. She doesn't feel like one wrong word will shift your mood or threaten your interest. That predictability at the emotional level, not the behavioral one, is what allows her to relax. And when she relaxes, she opens. This is where the power shift happens. A man who provides emotional safety sets the pace. He doesn't need to push intimacy forward. Her system starts moving toward him on its own. She shares more. She invests more. She becomes more responsive, not because he demands it, but because being with him feels regulating instead of draining. This presence is rare. Most men are either emotionally distant or emotionally needy. One makes her feel invisible. The other makes her feel responsible. Neither creates safety. But the man who can stay present without grasping, listen without fixing, lead without controlling, becomes someone her body trusts. And trust is leverage, not the manipulative kind, the biological kind. Because once a woman associates you with emotional stability, she stops scanning for exits. She stops bracing herself. She stops keeping one foot out the door. Her defenses lower, not because she was persuaded, but because her system no longer feels the need to defend itself. That's when attachment deepens. Not through intensity, but through consistency. The man who makes her feel safe doesn't rush the connection. He sets the pace by not needing an outcome. And that quiet confidence, that absence of urgency, is what gives him influence without effort. The man who creates safety always controls the pace. Here's where many men go wrong after hearing this. They hear emotional connection and swing hard in the opposite direction. They start oversharing, over-explaining, unloading past wounds as if intimacy is built through confession alone. They confuse vulnerability with depth and intensity with closeness. And it backfires. Emotional connection is not emotional dumping. Telling her everything you've been through doesn't make her feel closer to you. More often, it makes her feel responsible for you. And responsibility is one of the fastest ways to kill attraction. When a man trauma dumps early, texts constantly for reassurance, or needs her to regulate his emotions, her system doesn't relax. It tightens. She feels pressure instead of safety, obligation instead of desire. That isn't bonding, that's burden. Women don't pull away because men have emotions. They pull away because the emotions are unstable, because they leak urgency, because they signal that he needs her presence to feel okay. And neediness, no matter how gently it's wrapped, feels heavy. What women respond to is presence, the ability to be emotionally available without being emotionally dependent. A man who can listen without collapsing into the story, who can care without losing his center, who can hold space without requiring something in return. That kind of emotional regulation is attractive because it communicates strength at the nervous system level. It says, I'm steady, you don't need to manage me. And when she doesn't have to manage you, she can relax into herself. This is the distinction most men miss. They think opening up means giving more. In reality, it means staying grounded while she opens up. It means not hijacking emotional moments with your insecurities. It means allowing closeness to grow without rushing to secure it. Presence creates pull. Neediness creates pressure. A woman wants to feel connected to a man, not responsible for him. She wants to feel met, not leaned on. Once you understand that difference, emotional connection stops repelling women and starts drawing them in naturally. Presence is attractive. Neediness is not. At this point, the question isn't whether emotional connection matters, it's how to create it without losing yourself in the process. Here's the truth most men never hear: emotional bonding isn't a personality trait, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed without turning you into someone you're not. It starts with curiosity that isn't strategic, not questions designed to impress, but questions that reveal identity, the kind that pull her out of autopilot. When you ask a woman who she is beneath her roles, she feels seen instead of assessed, and being seen is one of the fastest pathways to attachment. But connection doesn't come from questions alone, it comes from how you respond. Most men hear words, very few hear emotion. When you reflect how she feels instead of parroting what she says, her system registers resonance. She doesn't feel like she's talking at you. She feels like she's connecting with you. That emotional attunement builds trust without force. Then there are shared emotional anchors, private jokes, small rituals, moments that belong only to the two of you. These don't need to be dramatic. In fact, the smaller they are, the more powerful they become. They create memory, and memory creates meaning. Over time, thinking of you triggers a feeling, not just an image. Another piece most men get wrong is the urge to fix. When she vents, she isn't asking for solutions, she's asking to be understood. The man who can sit with discomfort without trying to control it demonstrates emotional leadership. He shows he isn't overwhelmed by emotion, hers or his. That steadiness is deeply attractive. And then there's restraint. The less you try to impress her, the safer she feels. Performance creates pressure. Authentic presence creates ease. When you're not trying to win her, she stops feeling evaluated and starts feeling invited. This is the paradox. Emotional bonds form fastest when you aren't chasing them. You don't build connection by sacrificing your frame. You build it by staying centered while closeness develops naturally. That balance, openness without need, interest without urgency, is what separates men who are remembered from men who are replaced. Emotional connection isn't about giving more. It's about holding steady while something deeper takes shape. When a woman truly bonds with you, the dynamic shifts quietly, but completely. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't make declarations. She simply starts moving differently. Her desire deepens, not louder, not needier, deeper. Sex becomes less performative and more present. There's more eye contact, more openness, more willingness to give without being asked, because she's no longer protecting herself from you. Her loyalty shifts too, not out of obligation, but orientation. You become the person she thinks of first, the one she wants to tell things to, the one she compares others against without realizing it. Even when you're not there, your presence lingers, because her body has learned that connection with you feels regulating. Vulnerability follows naturally. She shares more of herself, not because you pulled it out of her, but because she feels safe enough to let it surface. When a woman bonds at the nervous system level, she stops managing how she's perceived. She doesn't need to impress you. She doesn't need to stay guarded. She trusts that who she is will be received, not judged or used. This is where men often misread what's happening. They think she stayed because they finally said the right thing, or did something right, or won her. Bonding doesn't work that way. She isn't staying because you convinced her. She's staying because her body chose you. That choice shows up as ease, as consistency, as a quiet pull that doesn't need to be chased or reinforced. You're no longer holding her attention. You already occupy space inside her emotional world. Notice what isn't happening. You aren't chasing. You aren't begging. You aren't explaining your value. You're being chosen. This is the level most men never reach because they keep trying to stimulate desire instead of cultivating attachment. They confuse intensity with depth, urgency with connection. But the man who understands bonding doesn't rush. He doesn't force. He lets her system settle. And once it does, it doesn't want to leave. She doesn't stay because she should. She stays because her body feels right with you. By now, the pattern should be clear. Sex opens the door. Emotional connection is what makes her lock it from the inside. Most men spend their lives trying to be louder, sharper, more impressive, and they keep losing women, not because they're unattractive, but because nothing about them feels settling. Nothing tells her nervous system, "You're safe here." That's why the cycle repeats. Great night, strong chemistry, silence afterward. Not because she's broken, not because dating is unfair, but because stimulation alone never creates attachment. Real attraction isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with drama or urgency. It's quiet, it's slow. It's the ease that grows when a woman doesn't need to protect herself around you, when her body stops scanning for danger, when being with you feels better than being alone. That's what makes a man unforgettable. If you don't understand this, you'll keep confusing desire with connection. You'll keep chasing intensity and wondering why it never becomes loyalty. You'll keep telling yourself women are unpredictable when their behavior actually follows a very consistent emotional logic. But once you understand how bonding really works, you stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop trying to force outcomes that were never meant to be forced. You become the man who stays calm while others grasp, present while others perform, chosen while others compete. If this shifted how you see attraction, subscribe. If you've lived the experience of doing everything right and still losing her, leave a comment. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for wanting clarity. Any man can touch her body. Very few know how to stay in her nervous system.